recording. We are done with chapter 9, so I'll go ahead and minimize that. And we will be working on week 11. Okay, and week 11 is scripting. And basically what scripting is generally like programming. We've looked at scripting already. Basically, when we're working with the command prompt, you're typing in commands to do things. Well, when you're doing scripting in the command prompt, you're typing in commands to get something done, but you want to run a whole bunch of them at once. And the reason for creating a script is typically because this is something that you're going to do over and over again. You're going to need to run it over and over again. So then you would do a script. So instead of typing all the commands over and over again, well, you just run that one script and then it gets everything done. And for example, actually, if we look at the assignment, you see that we will be building a script using PowerShell. And instead of, no, I believe it was assignment 6, where you had to use the command line to create folders. So we created a folder for the semester, a folder for a class, folders underneath that, and then this folder. So you would have to go in and out. You would have to create the folder, go in, create this folder, go in, and then create those. And that takes a bit of work, but you could create an entire script where it just runs and it does all of this all at one time. And you wouldn't typically have to do this. Well, actually, a good example of a script would be, let's say every semester you wanted to create folders for each one of your classes. But if you use Windows, and let me pull up a Windows. Let's say, if you wanted to create a folder for the semester, you would click on New Folder, and then you would say Fall 2020. Then you would go into that folder, and then you would just start creating a folder here, another folder for another class, another folder for another class. And you would have to do this process for every class and then go to each one of them and change it. Well, if you had a script that you could run every semester and all you needed to do was change the different semester or the year and spring, and then every class within that semester, you can quickly create the folders for each semester instead of going through this process for every class, create a new folder and then name it. It is so much quicker to just have a script to do that for you. And of course, you would have to know, well, which folders would you need inside of them. So knowing that this is a programming class, you would need a folder for pseudocode, programs, and written assignments. Other classes might typically have generally the same things, but you can always create additional folders later on. So in chapter 6, we had to do this in the command line, but now in chapter 10, we can create a script that does all of it automatically. And that's actually what the assignment is. I will need you to create the script, build a script, and then upload the script. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started in the content. So I'm going to go to week 11. And this also means that we only have, including this week, we only have 6 weeks left for the semester. So we're getting there. All right, so I already talked about scripts, and we'll be using text editors. And Of course, we'll be doing a script for Windows 10 and a script for CentOS. Now, we're not going to do so much, I would say, challenging stuff when it comes to Windows 10. But in CentOS, we're going to do a little bit more similar to programming. And I'll show you that in a little bit on the next page. The outcomes for the week, basically, some of this stuff is what we've already covered, like working lines. We've already covered working with lines, how to copy and paste commands, because now that we're going to be creating a script in PowerShell, you can just copy and paste a bunch of commands so you don't have to type everything over and over again. And I will show you that, and you'll see how you can do that. We'll be working with the PowerShell Integrated Scripting Environment, which is the ISE. And we'll be looking at help. Creating a report is just, displaying output of what you want to see. And of course, you'll be troubleshooting, this is your first time, so you're going to run into, you have some practice, but you can still run into errors. I mean, nobody's perfect. You always have typos, so you just have to troubleshoot the errors that you run into. And then next time I'll be focusing on CentOS creating scripts. I want to say that I have chapter 9 and 10 here because we do, you are going to be working with text editors. So things that you've already looked at from the last chapter, you will be practicing again. And then there's chapter 10 that has more of the scripting focus. There is a link here on PowerShell loops. There's so much more you can do with PowerShell, but we're not covering that in this class. So this is just an additional reference for, to pique your interest. And then here's a tutorial on Linux scripting, and we'll be doing more focus on programming type things with Linux. So let's go ahead and go to the next page. Okay, so this page here has a little bit more focus on what programming is. Because in programming, you have basic structures. You have a list of commands that you will be executing one after the other. And that's why it says sequence, because it'll just be a list of commands. So again, going back to the assignment, one of the commands would be make directory, the fall 2020 directory, and then another command would be to make another directory and then make another directory. So it's really just a sequence of commands going down the list of things that you need to do. And so that's why there's sequence there. Then part of a programming language is a decision or selection structure. And actually, let me go ahead and open up Notepad so I can kind of show you a bit about that. So a decision structure would be, if you just consider what computers do, computers, they don't really do anything unless you tell it to do something. So what you're looking at now is just a screen, and it's not going to do anything until you tell it to do something. So once I click file here with the mouse, now it knows to do something. It knows to show this, this box, this menu here. So then so at some point in Microsoft Windows, it says if something like this, if user clicks file, then it's going to display menu. And it might say something like else do nothing. Or you wouldn't even have to put else do nothing because it just won't do anything unless it just won't do anything unless the user clicks file. Or you might even put something like, or the program would have something like, if user right clicks file, then what is it going to do? Well, if I right click file, it doesn't do anything. So it's just a matter of everything that any program has. It is a collection of structures like this. It does things in sequence, and then it has if statements, and then it would have possibly a loop structure. Now, just like the name implies, a loop is something that happens over and over again. It is repeated. So what would be a situation where you needed to repeat something? So let's say, okay, no worries, David. Okay, so let's say you're writing a program that asks a user for information, and let's say it needed information multiple times. So you would have a loop, and you would have an end loop. So in this loop, you would ask a user for information. Okay, so basically you would have a loop and it continues over and over again. Well, the thing is that you don't want it to continuously ask for information and never stop. You want to tell it to stop at some point. So in a loop, it will, now remember there's different programming languages. There's Java, there's C++, there's Ruby. There's so many different programming languages. And so the way things are written or the syntax will be different in each language. But typically, there's something that says that there's a start of a loop, and then there's something that says where the loop ends. Now, anything that's inside of the loop, notice how I indented here. I did tab just to kind of make it easy to read for anyone that looks at it, and even for you too, because when you create programs, you can have a lot of code in there, and if you don't use something to make it easier to read, well, it's just going to be much more confusing than it should be. So tabbing is a good thing to remember to do. Okay, in addition to that, remember I was talking about having a loop that repeats something over and over again. So if you wanted to ask the user for information over and over again, you need to put it in a loop. But the question is, if you want it to stop after some point, then you need to tell it to, because you don't want to just keep on asking infinitely. So how do you tell it to stop? Well, at the beginning of the loop, you would say something like, and actually a typical loop would be a while loop. So in parentheses, you would tell the loop when to stop. So while x is less than 10. So that means that the loop would start maybe at 0, and it would continue to run until it's not less than 10 anymore. So once it hits 11, then it will stop. So that's just the way to stop the loop, so it doesn't, keep on repeating forever. So that's what a loop looks like. So that was sequence. Things are done in order from top to bottom. Decision would be an if statement. If user clicks file, then display menu. Okay, so that's the decision structure, and then here is the loop structure. Okay, so there's a programming process. So when you're going to create a program, you know, you're going to have a situation that you need the program to accomplish. So and one of the easiest things and one of the most common things that you would need a program to do, or at least a good example, is adding a couple of numbers. So you want to program, let's just say you want a program that adds two numbers and the user will input those numbers. So then the first thing to do would be to ask the user for number 1, and then ask the user for number 2. Okay, so we just asked the user for those two numbers. Well, the whole purpose of this program was to add the numbers. So number 1 plus number 2. And then, well, after asking the numbers and adding the numbers, then you want to display the number or display the output or result. And then you can say, well, what is the result? Well, if you put result equals adding the first number and the second number together, that is the result that you want to display. So, so that's the way to plan what your program is going to do. So you're given a task. You want to write a program that adds a couple of numbers, that asks the user for a couple of numbers, adds them, and then displays it. Well, then you need to plan what your program is going to do. And that is called pseudocode. And that is actually written down here somewhere, I believe. Thought it was there. Oh, here it is. Pseudocode. That basically is just your little plan, and it's just regular text written in plain English. So so you have a plan on what the computer should do. Later on, you will use the syntax or the way the program is written to actually do it in the program's language, because remember, there are different programming languages. There's Java, C++, Python, so many different ones, and there's just different ways of writing what you want it to do. So here is an example again on a program where you break the program into small pieces by making a list of things that you want to do. So this is a list of things you want to do, and then just kind of write it out in pseudocode. Notice the indentions again. Whatever is inside a loop, you want to indent. You want to make it clear and easy to read. Notice how, just like I did with the addition pseudocode, you prompt the user, then you do stuff over and over again until it ends or it meets the situation where you want it to end, and then you display messages at the end. So this is just another example of another program where you write the steps and then you kind of write it out in pseudocode, and then after you think you got it planned pretty well, then you can actually write it in the program language. So we won't be doing that so much in the Windows activity. It's just a script to create folders. You don't have to do a loop. You don't have to do if statements or anything. It's just basically a sequence of commands that you will be writing to accomplish this thing. But in the CentOS, it's a bit more involved with programming type code. Okay, so scripting. Okay, so I've already mentioned, executing the same command over and over again. So, and just like earlier, I mentioned this assignment here. We had basically this same thing in assignment 6, where we had to create a folder folders inside of it and then folders inside those. But instead of creating, writing every line individually, you can create a script that does these things. And the benefit of doing a script is so that you can set it up so it does it automatically without you without doing much work. Specifically, let's say this is for the fall semester. These are classes that you're taking in the fall. Well, what about in the spring of 2021? Instead of, creating all these folders one by one in Windows by doing new folder and then typing it, and then new folder and typing the next class, you could just have the script and just change the titles of them so that it can create the folder for the semester, and then it can create all the folders within them to save all your files. So scripting is basically a quick way of doing a bunch of tasks that you do repeatedly anyway. And once you have your script set up, all you really need to do is change the names of the classes that you have. So yeah, it really saves some time to, do scripting. And it's good practice. Okay, so this page here is about the PowerShell integrated scripting environment. Last time I did show a bit of what it looks like. If you just do start and then ISE and pay attention to which one you choose. x86 is the older version, so we don't want to use that. And the reason why it's x86 is because it's like 386, 486, 586, or Pentium. That's the way we were naming computers, I guess, before, but we're not doing that now. So basically, you want to do the one without the x86. So you want to right click and run as administrator, just so that you don't have any issues. And then it will start it up. And start it up in the background here. So here's PowerShell. And it is the way to create scripts in Windows. And let me go ahead and minimize that for now. So back to the page, PowerShell, you have 3 areas. Here's where you write your scripts. This is where you basically run it, or where it actually will be run, and you'll see the results of your script. And then here's the commands pane, but we're not going to be using that. So you can just hide it by clicking the X on the top of the tab there. And I'll be showing you how to use this in just a few minutes. Okay. Okay, also know that since it is a Microsoft product, you should be familiar with a lot of the buttons that are up here. There's the save, you get file, edit, view, that kind of thing. So there's the new button, there's an open button. So a lot of it is the same. Of course, when it comes to different programs, you're going to get different buttons though. So, PowerPoint, you have, a menu to view the slides, or buttons to view the slides. So it's similar, but then there's different buttons here. And I'll go through a few of the buttons there later on. Okay. But this is some cool stuff that we're doing today, this week actually. Okay, so about scripts, they're really just simple programs. You start from the beginning. You might have conditional statements, which is like the if statement or decision statement. If this, then something, or else something else. So And you can do loops, which is that while loop. If you want something done over and over again, that's the loop. If you want it so many times, you put it in here, what you want, how many times. And there are some videos in here to give you more information about the scripting. Yeah, I know. Yeah, this is really good, a really important one too, because programming is not an easy thing to do. So yes, this definitely is a very important class to be in. But also remember that I'm really trying to keep up with the videos. Oh, I keep on clicking that. I'm really trying to keep up with the videos, recording just the different segments and then putting them in the page, the activities page with videos. So I just have, here's the assignment summaries page, and later on I'll put videos here. So just like week 10, here's the assignment summaries, and then I put and videos. So I'm getting really good at setting those up and trying to do them as quickly as possible. Yes, absolutely, absolutely. It's always good to ask questions real time, definitely. Okay. Okay, so where were we? Okay. Okay, so that's scripting again, and yes, very important. You'll have to create a script for these assignments. So here's the assignment summary page. Notice that the first 5 is in Windows, and then the last 2 is in CentOS. And although there's only 2 in CentOS, there's a bit more programming in those for next class. So next class will be pretty important as well. Okay. Okay, here's your errors page. And then we have my wonderful commands and agenda page. This will be very helpful for you to look back and what you need to do. Specifically, there's a couple of things that I added. I would say this part in particular, if you, let's say you make a mistake and you need to delete a folder, I added that one there to help you out. So this right here, this activity 10.-3 is going to be really helpful for your assignment for this week. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. I am just going to do the PowerShell on the Windows system that I have now. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and close this commands tab here because I won't be using that. So this pretty much just looks like the command line that we've worked with before. Okay, okay, so I opened up PowerShell ISC just because I want to show you again. You just hit the Windows, you can type in ISE, and then it automatically shows up the 2 options. This is the older one, x86. So you right click on this one and do Run as Administrator, and it will open up this PowerShell window here. And actually, let me go ahead and stop this recording.